Discover the touching moment. CO's daughter asks, "Can we save her?" on an incredible blind date. Sophie sat in the university cafe, a favorite haunt between classes, the smell of fresh coffee almost suffocating. She felt trapped, ensconced between walls adorned with pictures of graduates, alumni who conquered the world, while she felt invisible, lost under her father's shadow. Behind every degree and job title, an empire loomed, and her father's relentless ambition suffocated her spirit. Digging her nails into the wooden table, she thought, a blind date might just be what I need, a way to escape this suffocating reality. The night of the date arrived, and Sophie's stomach churned with a mix of excitement and dread. She feared that the person waiting for her might ultimately reflect everything she had always resented, a life dictated by expectations. But Jack was different, she soon discovered. As they meandered through cozy diners and climbed scenic trails, laughter spilled from her lips like pent-up sunshine. Here was a man free from the gilded cage of corporate ambition. He lived for the shot, for the wild beauty of the world. Each story he shared unfolded layers of himself that she never knew people still possessed. "Photography is everything to me," he said, his eyes alight with passion. "The animals, their habitats, all of it needs to be captured, to be protected." Sophie felt something new flicker within her, something she had buried deep under layers of prescriptive behaviors. But just as the warmth spread through her, an unforeseen chill crept in. She overheard whispers from her father's office about a shopping complex that was going to transform the area. Her heart sank when Jack mentioned the sanctuary. "It's not just a place," he said, sharing memories of countless school projects and family outings spent in its embrace. "It's my home." Her skin prickled with a mix of denial and anxiety. How could her father's corporation be involved in the destruction of something so vital? Caught in an avalanche of conflicting emotions, Sophie felt lost, torn between Jack's passionate ideals and the loyalty she felt towards her father, a loyalty that had shaped her very existence. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As the weeks passed, Jack's world and Sophie's began to intertwine more, an understanding blossoming that encapsulated everything she believed she was missing. Yet, every shared moment became tainted with dread as the magnitude of her father's plans loomed ever closer. She didn't want to betray Jack, but every time she looked at him, she saw a future buried beneath corporate greed. The announcement finally came, and the community buzzed with discontent. Sophie's heart clenched, a knot of anguish forming. Their chemistry solidified even as every decision felt heavy with consequence. Steeling herself, Sophie decided to confront the darkness embodied in her father's empire. As the gala approached, a night where opulence would overshadow the cries for justice, she felt her pulse quicken with a mix of resolve and terror. Standing in the lavish hall, surrounded by laughter and clinking glasses, she fought to stay anchored to her convictions. But eavesdropping on her father's conversation about profits and expansion shattered her facade. "Can we save her?" The urgency in her voice trembled as those words bubbled up unexpectedly, a desperate plea spilling from her lips. She locked eyes with Jack, his surprise mirrored her own. Time suspended as the hall fell silent, and she grappled with fear and determination. Could this moment redefine everything she thought she understood about identity, love, and the facade she wore as her father's daughter? Each breath became heavier, uncertainty hanging thick in the air as she awaited the storm that surely loomed ahead. Sophie stood frozen, her heart racing in her chest as the weight of her words echoed around the opulent hall. Jack's gaze pierced through the whirlwind of emotions swirling within her, and the bubbling tension threatened to pull her under. The laughter that had once enveloped the gala dissolved into a murmur, eyes flickering from her to her father, his icy exterior momentarily disrupted by her unexpected outburst. "Sorry, what did you say?" Jack's voice was steady but laced with disbelief, forcing Sophie to confront the implications of her cry. Could this be the moment when she finally detached from her father's oppressive legacy? A sanctuary, she stammered, her thoughts racing. They're planning to demolish it for the shopping complex. Her confession hung in the air like a dark cloud, ready to unleash a storm. The murmurs swelled around them, and she could sense the curiosity brewing in the crowd. Jack's expression shifted, understanding dawning as fury flickered in his eyes. "What are you going to do?" he asked, his voice low yet fierce. The urgency of the question struck her, magnifying the inner turmoil she had been grappling with for weeks. In that instant, Sophie realized she needed to make a choice. Her father's empire loomed large, a structure built on ambition and greed, yet now it threatened to bury the sanctuary that meant everything to Jack and to her, too. Fearful of the repercussions, she hesitated, but Jack grabbed her hand. "We can fight this. You can be a part of something real. You don't have to follow your dad's path." His words ignited a spark in her, dispelling some of the shadows that had claimed her heart. "Can I?" she whispered, her voice quaking as the truth began to break through her defenses. She had spent so long living according to the expectations that had been set for her. Stepping away would be an act of rebellion. "Yes. But you need to decide." Jack's intensity was disarming, and every beat of her heart shouted at her to choose. The atmosphere around them shifted, becoming electric. Watching her father, unyielding in his pursuit of profit, distanced her from what she had always thought was loyalty. It was now the catalyst for her awakening. She couldn't sit back any longer, not when the integrity of the sanctuary and Jack's dreams hung in the balance. Sophie took a deep breath, summoning her fading courage. "Okay, we fight. We'll save the sanctuary? Together." Her resolve solidified like steel, a promise to both Jack and herself. No more cleaning up her father's. She wanted her own sense of identity, forged through action, not inheritance. The decision set a fire in her veins, a feeling of liberation mixed with trepidation. Yet the anger swirling within her father's circles was palpable. The pushback they would face now felt tangible. Secrets and confrontations lay ahead, marking a path fraught with uncertainty. What repercussions awaited her? She couldn't yet see, but her resolve steeled her against the coming storm. As the gala resumed around them, Sophie felt the tide of her life shift. She would need allies. Conversations to mend and relationships to confront her father would not take her departure lightly. But for the first time, Sophie felt alive, her own future glimmering just beyond the horizon. The night was far from over. The air hummed with promise, yet she was now tethered to an undeniable truth: her father's world would never welcome the voice of dissent, especially from his own daughter. "How do we start?" she asked Jack, determination replacing her denial. Passion ignited in his eyes, her question sparking a new fire of possibility. He smiled, excitement pulsing between them as they prepared to defy the empire that had imprisoned her for too long. Just then, a subtle shifting of shadows caught Sophie's eye. Her father had turned his attention their way, and the weight of his gaze felt like a looming storm cloud filled with both rage and betrayal. The moment that would define her path was near. Would she embrace the fight, risking everything for a cause she now felt compelled to champion? With the excitement of her decision still crackling in the air, Sophie felt a propelling urge to act. The gala continued, but she could no longer immerse herself in the facades that once felt so familiar. A slow tide of anticipation mixed with dread filled her chest as she and Jack stepped away from the crowd, intent on planning their next moves. Jack led her to a quiet corner, away from prying ears, where they could discuss their strategy without fear of being overheard. Sophie's mind spun with possibilities, each one more daunting than the last. This was not just about saving a sanctuary. It was about unearthing her own truth and severing the chains binding her to her father's legacy. "What's the next step?" she asked, searching Jack's face for reassurance. "How do we rally support?" Jack leaned in closer, his expression fierce yet thoughtful. "We need to gather allies who care about the sanctuary, the local community, environmental groups, anyone who values what it represents. We can't rely on your father's influence if we want to change this." Sophie nodded, excitement bubbling in her chest. It felt invigorating to consider her world beyond the gilded cage of privilege that had confined her for so long. That makes sense. I know a few people in town who might be willing to help. She hesitated, a whirlwind of anxiety crashing over her. While the prospect of outreach thrilled her, the thought of confronting her father's power sent chills along her spine. But what if my father finds out? He won't take this lightly. Jack's gaze softened, his thoughtful demeanor a steady guiding force. Then we prepare for it. If he discovers what we're doing without any groundwork laid, he'll crush us before we even begin. We need to build a foundation of support first. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Sophie nodded again, determination solidifying in her veins. I can reach out to Sarah and Adam from the local environmental group. I think they'd help if they knew what was at stake. And we'll draft a strategy, use social media to spread the word, Jack added, his enthusiasm palpable. It's time we take a stand. Sophie felt a flicker of inspiration ignite. She was no longer merely the CEO's daughter, she was becoming an agent of change, pulling on her latent capabilities. We can start a campaign, rallying those who love the sanctuary. This place is a home to countless animals and a memory for so many people, including my dad. Jack nodded, pride flickering in his eyes, and she reveled in it. This was how partnerships thrived, through shared visions and mutual respect. Yet a cautionary voice whispered in her ear, reminding her that her father's reach was vast and relentless. Glimpses of her father's cold gaze haunted her. She imagined the inevitable confrontation lurking at the gate of rebellion. We'll need to tread carefully. I understand my father better than anyone, his methods, his network. He will seek to undermine me, to manipulate this situation. Unwavering, Jack squeezed her hand. Together, we have the strength to challenge him. You know him. That knowledge is power. Let us use it. The night air felt dense as they mapped out their plan, and Sophie began to perceive the breadth of her internal transformation. Each choice she made would ripple outward, shaping not just her identity but the community surrounding her. The realization of her potential was staggering. She could forge a new path, one defined by her principles, not merely inherited privilege. But as they surged ahead, her father remained a towering shadow over her future. The looming threat that swirled within her mind promised confrontation. Sophie's focus sharpened, sharpening her resolve into a blade. I won't just fight for the sanctuary. I'll fight for my autonomy. I won't be a pawn in my father's game any longer. Jack's lips curled into a smile that radiated hope. Then let us get started. The showdown is coming, and when it does, we'll face it head on. A fire ignited between them, hot and fierce, illuminating the path ahead. Yet, as she glanced once more toward the gala where her father mingled with celebration, the chill of uncertainty crept back into her bones. Would she truly be able to stand against the weight of her father's empire? The question remained, lurking in the depths of her spirit as they prepared for their first steps toward freedom. The clock was ticking, and Sophie was already feeling the echo of her father's strategies reeling in response. What would she uncover about her own strengths and limitations as they forged into this unknown? The following morning came with a thick veil of tension hanging over Sophie. The sun streamed through her window, illuminating the room but failing to warm the chill settling in her chest. With each passing hour, her resolve became a fragile thread, fraying under the weight of doubts. Today was significant. Today, she would reach out to Sarah and Adam from the environmental group. She spent the smooth hours of the morning gearing up for the burgeoning confrontation, reminding herself that she was no longer content to play the role dictated by her upbringing. Each small act of defiance, calling Sarah, sending that first email, was a rebellion she needed to embrace. But as she opened her laptop, the familiar tremor of anxiety coursed through her fingers. Sophie inhaled deeply and let her thoughts roam. They danced around the corner of what she truly feared, not just her father's wrath, but her own capacity to lead. The very idea of stepping fully into her power, while thrilling, felt like stepping off a cliff. Would she be able to fly, or would her wings fail her? Gathering her thoughts, she typed a tentative email to Sarah, detailing her intentions and the necessity of the sanctuary's survival, directing them to look deeper than merely the animals in peril. This was her legacy as much as her father's. Would they understand her commitment? Or would they dismiss her as just another wealthy girl with nothing real to offer? Before she hit send, a mental image of her father's cold disapproval flashed before her, his eyes narrowing, the disdain in his voice as he meticulously dismantled her confidence. What if he found out? What if this burgeoning inquiry prompted retaliation? No, she whispered into the empty room, squaring her shoulders. This isn't just about him. This is about me. She pressed send with a decisive click, her heart pounding as if heralding her conquest. Moments passed as she sat, waiting for the response. The digital silence threatened to suffocate her resolve, but she stood firm. This was merely a seed planted. Time and patience would be the sun and water nudging it to grow. Hours later, within the hum of the coffee shop, Sarah replied, each sentence igniting sparks of hope within Sophie. Sarah was not only interested, she was enthusiastic, shared her own experiences of fighting for environmental causes, and immediately proposed a meeting to strategize. Yes, Sophie breathed, a rush of exhilaration setting her heart racing. This was her first tangible step towards creating change, and it stoked a fire within her that she thought had long simmered out. Gratitude flickered through her, followed quickly by an unsettling realization. This newfound sense of purpose had already spotlighted her father's looming shadow. Determined to counteract the fear creeping back in, Sophie met with Jack later in the week. They reviewed their plan again, recalibrating their approach to ensure defenses against her father's possible maneuvers. Each moment spent deliberating further transformed her from passive participant to active architect, dissecting her father's influence, and recognizing the game surrounding her. "You're doing great," Jack assured her, his eyes unwavering. "But we need to be one step ahead. Can you pull more people from your circle of influence?" Sophie hesitated. The stark realization that some in her privileged circle might align themselves with her father instead of her cranked her internal conflict to a new level. Would they support a cause that contradicted the legacy they benefited from? "Maybe I could talk to Roger," she suggested, knowing full well that Roger was an old family friend, someone who had never looked favorably on her father's projects. His knowledge and connections could be crucial. "Then let us do it," Jack encouraged, clearly seeing the worth in her potential allies. Yet, as Sophie walked away that evening, her heart no longer felt free. The impending confrontation with her father loomed larger, intertwining with her anticipated growth. Her defiance was exhilarating, but it stood in stark contrast against the familiar cadence of fear she had learned to navigate her entire life. The stakes had risen, and as Sophie began to unravel the complexity of her dual existence, an agent for change and the daughter of a titan, the true battle was just beginning. As she arrived home, she was caught off guard by a text, an invitation from her father, requesting a rare dinner together. It wielded the weight of a challenge, and she hesitated. Did he suspect? Was this his way of cataloging her rebellion before it gained traction? The decision weighed heavily on her. Would she face her father as she was now, standing resolute in her truth? Or would she crumble as she had so many times before? The thought coursed through her, urgent and piercing. Tomorrow would demand not just her resolve, but the courage to confront the heart of her lineage. The path ahead loomed distorted, fraught with tension that could either shatter her or kindle her ambitions. A reckoning awaited her, and one question circled menacingly in her mind. Would she emerge victorious or vanish behind her father's empire forever? Sophie barely slept that night. Each tick of the clock seemed to echo in her mind as she mentally rehearsed potential dialogues with her father. She'd been living under the same roof with a legacy she never chose, and in that format, uncertainty was entrenched in every conversation. As dawn broke, she felt a twist of both dread and anticipation. The upcoming dinner began to loom less like a conversation and more like a battleground, where every word would be measured against her father's stoic judgments. She visualized their past discussions, where nuance was often drowned out by his unwavering opinions. Would she be able to stand her ground, or would past habits rise to stifle her? After a lukewarm cup of coffee, she spent hours researching Roger. As she combed through articles and interviews, he emerged not only as a fierce advocate for environmental issues, but as an influential figure skilled at maneuvering through political minefields. His passion mirrored hers, churning her determination. Absently, Sophie asked herself again whether her friends would truly support her new venture. Friends who had always seen her as her father's daughter, or worse yet, that familiar whisper of just another rich girl, felt like shackles around her confidence. By noon, she had texted Roger, nervously sending a brief message detailing her intention to meet. The waiting game began anew. Uncertainty flooded her. Would he take her seriously? The idealistic vision she had harbored was beginning to take shape, yet rooted fears clung to her mind like shadows. She had envisioned standing shoulder to shoulder with Roger, teaming up to protect their cause, but could she gain his trust? As the hours passed, her role shifted and expanded. It wasn't merely about changing the perception of her past, but actively seeking others who shared her vision. With every effort made toward her cause, her image as a leader grew clearer, grounding and empowering her in an uncertain landscape. Finally, as the sun dipped low, signaling the approach of dinner, Roger replied. He was available to meet tomorrow evening. A rush of relief washed over Sophie, but it was soon replaced by the inescapable gravity of her dinner with her father. In her mind, she visualized herself walking into the restaurant, head held high, ready for the conversation she had to have. She dressed carefully, picking an outfit that straddled elegance and approachability. Every detail emphasized a new identity, one of solidity apart from her father's shadow. As she stared at her reflection, she no longer saw just his daughter, she saw someone who had the potential to carve her own path. Dinner began under the sterile glow of overhead lights, their conversation conventional at first. Sophie noticed her father's thin smile deform into skepticism as she encouraged dialogue about sustainability and the importance of their family's land maintaining its natural integrity. She pressed deeper, weaving her genuine concerns into their exchange. Sarah's enthusiasm echoed in her mind, while Jack's strategic perspective provided her with guidance. But the moment she noted his outward dismissal of her concerns, "It's just business, Sophie," the threads she had carefully spun began to unravel. Beneath his patronizing tone was the familiar weight of his disapproval. The air thickened with tension, coaxing out doubts she had fought so hard against. Realizing what was at stake, Sophie's resolve surged. The stakes were higher than she had anticipated, and she needed to grab the reins. "It's about more than just business," she forced out, her voice stronger than she felt. "It's our responsibility to ensure a sustainable future, both for the sanctuary and beyond." His eyes narrowed, and for a fleeting moment, Sophie saw the play of emotions across his face: surprise, irritation, disbelief. Could she pierce through that veneer of indifference? In that quiet exchange, a fragile truth emerged. She was no longer simply a reflection of her father. She was a force unto herself, challenging not only the status quo but the narrative he had imposed on her. The clock ticked in the background, their silence hanging heavy as he processed her words. Sophie felt a surge of adrenaline coupled with the fear of possible backlash. Had she gone too far? The air thickened again, and she swallowed hard, bracing for his response. Standing on the precipice of her own ambition, she knew this confrontation was just the beginning. The choices made in this moment would ripple through her life, intensifying the struggle for her identity. She wouldn't shy away, she couldn't, not now. Then, just as the tension reached its zenith, her phone buzzed with a message, a reminder of her looming meeting with Roger. The world suddenly felt vast and full of possibility, yet deeply interconnected with the internal conflict that brewed. The fork in the road had never been clearer. Tomorrow, she would prepare for that meeting. In that coffee shop, all eyes would turn towards her. Could she consolidate her power, or would she continue to be trapped in her father's empire? The stakes were rising. She had no other option but to confront her destiny head-on. Sophie awoke with a clarity she hadn't experienced in weeks. The morning light streamed through her window, illuminating the room and imbuing her with a sense of purpose. After the confrontation with her father, a fragile strength had blossomed inside her. Today, she would nurture that resilience further. While making her breakfast, Sophie's thoughts raced ahead to her meeting with Roger. She envisioned the coffee shop a small, cozy place with the smell of fresh brews enveloping each patron like a comforting embrace. It held the promise of new beginnings, a commitment to her cause, a cause she now felt ready to champion. Fueled by determination, she decided to spend her morning crafting a strategic plan. A pad of paper in front of her, she began to jot down ideas that wove together her personal vision with actionable steps. She could create community awareness about the sanctuary's importance, develop sustainable plans that showcased the family land's potential for conservation, and above all, engage others alongside her. This was not merely a plan, it was an outline of her evolving identity, declaring that she was no longer just her father's child. The minutes turned into hours as she lost herself in the task at hand. Focused and fervent, she wrapped each thought in detail, connecting her aspirations to the realities of sustainability, a conversation she yearned to share with Roger. She visualized them exchanging ideas, her enthusiasm resonating with him, crafting a unified mission ahead. As the clock struck noon, however, a familiar wave of doubt washed over her. Would she be able to articulate her thoughts fluidly, or would she falter, entangled in insecurity? What if he saw her as just the CO's daughter, unable to stand on her own? She shook the thoughts away and concentrated on the one undeniable truth. This meeting could be a defining moment, a leap towards her future that demanded courage. By the time she stepped into the coffee shop, Sophie had donned her newfound identity, someone capable and passionate, with ideas that mattered. The hum of conversations enveloped her, grounding her in the moment. A glance around the room revealed people engrossed in various discussions, each absorbed in their own world, and she felt a kinship with their quest for meaning. Roger entered moments later, a vision of charisma and drive. As he approached, she noticed the warmth in his smile, welcoming yet challenging, keenly aware of her mission. "Sophie, it's great to finally meet you," he began, extending a hand. "Thank you so much for meeting with me, Roger," she replied, her voice steady, demonstrating the confidence that had been building inside her. They found a table in the corner, and as the conversation began to flow, she felt a pulse of excitement coursing through her veins. They spoke of initiatives around sustainability, the power of communities coming together, and the necessity of giving voice to the concerns that the world often overlooked. With each passing moment, she leaned into the rhythm of their exchange, contributing her insights, sharing her vision. His nods of affirmation invigorated her, confirming that she wasn't just a privileged daughter but someone with passion and resolve. Then, stoking the fires of vulnerability and courage, she shared her confrontation with her father. "I've spent so long feeling like I had to conform to his expectations," Sophie admitted, her voice gaining strength as she revealed her thoughts. "But I realize now, the power of my voice is vital in this fight for sustainability. I want to make a difference, not just for my family's legacy, but for the future." Roger leaned forward, his interest piqued. "That's powerful, Sophie. You don't need to conform, you can redefine the narrative." The conversation veered into uncharted territory, as Roger began to reveal his own struggles, the balancing act of being a public figure while endeavoring to stay true to personal convictions. In that moment, a bond forged between them transcended the formalities of a partnership. As they continued to share ideas and hopes, Sophie felt the tremor of anticipation flutter around her. This was not just a dialogue about business or environmental causes, but one of forging a new path for herself. She realized with profound clarity that she was not just seeking Roger's partnership. She was helping to carve out her own identity in the landscape of change. But just as the dialogue reached a crescendo, a sharp buzz interrupted, vibrating through the table. It was a message from her father, a reminder of the persistent influence he still wielded over her aspirations. The notification felt like a hand reaching into her moment, grasping to pull her back into the shadows. She hesitated, the duality of her world colliding painfully. How would she respond? Could she embrace the direction she was carving for herself while navigating the expectations imposed upon her lineage? The stakes suddenly loomed larger than anticipated, and the weight of her choices pressed down anew. With her heart racing and resolve steeling, She knew the time had come to face not only her father's shadow but also the seismic shifts within herself. In this pivotal moment, a voice echoed within her, bold and unwavering, reminding her that this journey had only just begun. The question remained, could she seize this momentum before it slipped away, or would she remain ensnared in the old narrative? In that coffee shop filled with possibilities, Sophie felt the tremors of change rise within her like a tide that could no longer be turned back. The moment to confront the past and embrace the future was now at hand. Sophie stared at her phone, the screen illuminating her face with the reminder of her father's expectations. It wasn't just a distraction, it felt like a tether dragging her back to a comfort zone she had been so desperate to escape. She ran her thumb over the notifications, knowing the messages would blend concern with an undertone of control, constant reminders from a father who equated her hesitance with weakness. "Is everything all right?" Roger's voice broke through the fog of her thoughts. His gaze was steady, probing. He didn't just see the CEO's daughter. He saw Sophie, a person grappling with the weight of familial expectations while daring to carve a new path. "Yes," she replied, though uncertainty tinged her voice. She took a breath, gathering the fragments of her resolve. "Sorry, it's just... family?" he guessed, his tone encouraging. She nodded, recalling the times her father's presence loomed over her pursuits. "It's hard to break away from what he wants for me. I've spent so long adhering to his vision. I understand. It's difficult to break those patterns, especially when they're deeply embedded." Roger paused, leaning back slightly, seemingly contemplating a strategy. "But you're not seeking permission anymore, are you?" Sophie felt the words resonate with her. "No, I'm not. But it's as if those voices never truly quiet down." The admission tasted bittersweet, a mixture of relief and frustration echoing within her. "What if we framed this differently?" Roger suggested, leaning forward, energy crackling between them. "Instead of viewing your father's expectations as chains, think of them as contexts. They shape you, true, but they don't define you. You're the one in control of how you respond." He was right. In that moment, Sophie glimpsed the reasons behind her father's actions, not simply control, but concern, rooted in a desire to see her succeed. Could she redirect that concern into fuel for her own ambitions, rather than letting it weigh her down? A newfound determination gripped her. "I want to take inspiration from those expectations but channel them into something that represents not just his legacy, my legacy." Roger's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "Yes. Leverage your past, use it to create opportunities that reflect your vision and can make a real difference." His excitement was contagious, and Sophie felt the gears shifting inside her mind. The conversation flowed effortlessly now, addressing her ideas, the sanctuary, the unique programs she could implement. With each word exchanged, the tension in her chest began to dissipate, replaced by a burgeoning passion. Roger challenged her to refine her proposals further, integrating practical solutions with visionary aspirations. As they concluded their meeting, a smile curled on her lips. The coffee shop had transformed into a sanctuary of possibility, an incubator for her ambitions. She had entered uncertain, but now she left with clarity. Furthermore, she would not just integrate her father's influence into her aspirations, she would redefine it, merging tradition with innovation. Yet, as she stepped back into the bustling street, the weight of her phone felt ever heavier. If her father's words were a chain that bound her, what would it take to break free? And was she ready for the storm that may follow that breach? Before she could fully commit to this transformation, she knew the confrontation was inevitable. How would her father react to her newfound independence? The thought left a slight tremor in her hands as she resolved to respond, not react. She would not be the quiet daughter anymore. She paused, glancing at the message once more. It tugged at her heart, tempting her to retreat back into comfort. But a clearer voice resonated within her. She'd rather face conflict than cower in silence. With each step she took towards home, Sophie felt the roots of her old identity shake beneath her. The moment to confront her father, with all the risks attached, loomed ahead. Would she confront him with the insight and confidence gained today, or would those same doubts creep back? The battle inside her heart was just beginning, and the choices she needed to make would not only dictate her future but would define what kind of daughter she would choose to be. Sophie walked through the door to her apartment, the familiar scent of wood polish and lingering coffee greeting her like an old friend. Yet tonight, the space felt different, claustrophobic, charged. A storm was brewing within her, one that demanded resolution. She tossed her bag onto the counter with a force that rattled her scattered thoughts. Her gaze drifted to the lounge chair where her father often settled after work, a sea of composed authority. Suddenly it felt like a prison. The thought made her stomach churn. Could she truly challenge the man whose pedestal she had been taught to admire? She paced the room, the urgency of her decision pushing her heart rate higher. The image of Roger's encouraging smile lingered, a beacon amidst the swirling doubts. Leverage your past, he had said. But how? Taking a deep breath, Sophie reached for her phone, hovering over the contact that had been both comfort and burden. She wondered if perhaps, instead of retreating into silence, she could transform this moment into a dialogue, an opportunity for both discovery and confrontation. In her mind, strategies took shape, possible approaches, yet each potential scenario felt overwhelming. A soft ding from her phone broke her concentration. It was another message from her father, a simple question about dinner. Sophie hesitated, fingers trembling slightly over the screen. She could ignore it, deflect the inevitability of their conversation. But would that help her grow? Ignore the fight and risk scrambling back into an old rhythm? No, she whispered decisively, her voice firm in the otherwise silent apartment. Instead, she quickly typed a response. Can we talk about my plans and where I want to take things? The seconds stretched, each heartbeat echoing her fear. The reply came almost instantly. What plans are you referring to, Sophie? The question lingered like an uninvited guest. She could almost hear the skepticism dripping from his words, doubts clouding his understanding. It was time to reclaim her narrative, emphasize her vision, and stand her ground. Sophie closed her eyes, envisioning how she would express herself when he walked through that door. She wanted to articulate her aspirations clearly, to illustrate how she planned to embrace their family's legacy while creating her own distinct identity. But questions tugged at her. Would he understand? Would he see the evolution of his daughter, or would he be too blinded by his expectations? A firm knock on the door jolted her from her internal case. Dad, she thought, a mix of determination and dread swirling in her chest as she opened it. Her father entered, an impressive figure cloaked in authority, yet she felt the shift in her power. This time she wouldn't cower. This time it was her turn to speak. They exchanged pleasantries, but she could sense his tension, the weight of their unspoken history hanging heavily between them. As they settled down in the living room, Sophie found her voice growing steadier, emboldened by the memory of her meeting with Roger. I've been thinking a lot about my future and I want to incorporate your vision but on my terms. The words poured out, each syllable igniting a flicker of confidence within her. Yet as her father's brow furrowed in response, her heart raced. She recognized the brewing storm in his eyes. His expectations collided with her aspirations, and she braced for the potential backlash of her declaration. Would he understand her newfound desire for autonomy? The air crackled with tension as her father opened his mouth to respond. The moment felt surreal, as if time froze in anticipation of his words. Sophie held her breath. Are you sure you know what you're asking for? He challenged, his voice steady yet laced with concern. The question echoed in her mind, layered with implications. How sure was she? Did she truly understand the full cost of the independence she craved? She swallowed, realizing that the path forward could lead to sacrifice. Yet she was prepared to engage, to redefine herself beyond what had been handed to her, and the realization settled like a warm cloak. Yes, she was ready. I'm sure, Sophie replied, her voice stronger than she felt. It's time for me to choose, for me. As silence enveloped them, the vast space of their future hung in the air, pregnant with possibility. Would this conversation pivot them both toward understanding or push them further apart? And with the stakes rising, she understood one thing: this was just the beginning. What would she sacrifice to create her own identity? And could her father accept the daughter emerging from the ashes of prescribed expectations as a force for change? As he processed her words, a chilling uncertainty crept back into her heart, but determination quickly replaced it. Sophie wasn't just fighting for her independence, she was fighting for understanding against a legacy of control. Would the past have the final say, or could she carve a new legacy that harmonized both their visions? Sophie's heartbeat thudded in her ears, drowning out the cacophony of her father's initial silence. She sat still, the atmosphere thickened by the unresolved tension. His expression was a kaleidoscope of emotions, paternal instinct wrestling against entrenched beliefs. "I've always imagined," he finally began, his tone shifting from incredulity to concern, "that you would follow a specific path. A path that ensures stability and continuity for our family." Stability. The word echoed in her mind, laden with criticism. Did his notion of progress simply equate to following an established blueprint? "I understand that, but I can't be who you want me to be," she countered, fanning the flames of this burgeoning argument. "My own path won't erase our legacy. It will enhance it." His brow knitted tighter. She watched as each of his barriers rose like walls around him. "Are you really prepared to risk everything? The company, our family's reputation," he pressed on, his voice rising with conviction. "Isn't the risk of not embracing change far greater?" The words slipped from her lips before she could second-guess herself. The ideas that had once been mere whispers in her mind were becoming clearer, sharper, gainful in this moment. "I want to innovate, not just preserve." The pause that followed felt infinite, stretching her resolve thin. Did he grasp the enormity of her vision? Or was this merely a clash of wills? "I'm not trying to disregard what you've built," she continued, feeling emotions bubble to the surface. "I want to contribute, but on my terms. I need you to see me as a partner in this, not a subordinate." Desperation flickered in his eyes, but there was something else too, a glimmer of recognition, the faintest trace of a father yearning to connect. "But what if you fail? What if you end up losing more than you bargained for?" For the first time, Sophie felt the weight of failure. The mantle of responsibility coiled around her, squeezing tight. But in that moment, a profound sense of clarity washed over her. Was not the possibility of falling part of rising? Then I will fail trying. I refuse to live a life dictated by anyone else, even if it's you. I have to forge my own identity. Her chest constricted as new thoughts collided. What if he couldn't accept this new iteration of her? The very essence of their relationship was hinging upon these fractured moments, and she understood that the scars of familial loyalty ran deep. A heavy sigh escaped her father, an exhalation of combating fears and hidden pride. "What if I don't want to share control, Sophie?" The vulnerability in his voice shifted the dynamics yet again, opening the door to a raw honesty that had always been timidly pulled shut. "Then we'll never grow, will we?" She was countering his question now with a question of her own, driving further into the heart of their conflict. "We'll stay in this stalemate forever, and neither of us will be satisfied." His gaze dropped, and for a split second she saw the fractures behind the facade of control. Perhaps he was just as terrified as she was. Maybe this was the moment that could define them both. "Let us take it step by step," he proposed cautiously, lifting his head to meet her eyes again. "Outline what you want, and I'll listen. No guarantees, but I'll try." A surge of hope flushed through her, delicate yet fierce. Was this her opening? "I want to start a new project, a fresh branch for the company, one that reflects both our values yet embraces innovation. Something that blends tradition with the future." Sophie felt her pulse quickening as she sensed the adjustments in his demeanor. This was potential a pivot point in their relationship. And as she glimpsed the possibilities stretching ahead, she clarified, "I can do this, Dad. I can lead it." Just as he began to nod, a sudden doubt clouded her mind, igniting another question she feared to voice. Could he really let go? But before she could probe deeper into those concerns or articulate them, the doorbell rang, an urgent, intrusive sound that shattered their fragile moment. She glanced at her father, and they both shared a look of confusion, realization dawning in the weight of their unresolved tension. Outside this room, potential distractions awaited, but the pressing conversation remained half-formed. The stakes just elevated again. What awaited them beyond their conversation, and could this detour lead to a deeper understanding or a definitive setback? As she walked towards the door, a sense of uneasy anticipation consumed her. This was a critical point in their journey, and Sophie wasn't sure whether it would enhance their future or let the present fester. Her hand gripped the doorknob, and in that moment the question loomed clear: was she prepared for whatever revelations lay ahead, whatever truths turned their world upside down? Would this door lead to clarity or chaos? Sophie opened the door, revealing Sarah, the passionate environmentalist she had reached out to after her meeting with Roger. The unexpected appearance doused the intense atmosphere with a splash of fresh energy, acting as a catalyst for the conversation that had been brewing between her and her father. "Hey! I hope I'm not interrupting," Sarah said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "I wanted to talk to you about the sanctuary project." Sophie felt her father's tension wane slightly, but the real battle still lay ahead. As they welcomed Sarah into the living room, Sophie glanced at her father, silently questioning if he would allow this exchange to transpire. To her surprise, he nodded slightly, giving her an unspoken vote of confidence. Perhaps he sensed that a battle waged in collaboration could illuminate more than conflict alone. "Actually, Dad, this is my friend Sarah. She has been working on initiatives that could help us protect the sanctuary," Sophie introduced, feeling the ground beneath her shift a little more solidly beneath her feet. Sarah wasted no time diving into the details of her work: community outreach, conservation programs, and the importance of grassroots movements. The fervor in her voice countered any simmering tension that remained in the room. The unguarded connection between the three of them ignited a spark of potential that Sophie hadn't fully recognized could happen in her father's presence. "I know the sanctuary means a lot to you," Sarah addressed Sophie, who nodded vigorously, grateful for the support. "But it also holds value for many others in our community. It's not just wildlife, it's a part of their history." Sophie met her father's gaze, watching his expression shift as he mulled over Sarah's words. "Legacy," he mouthed, as if testing the word. "Exactly. And we can take that and build upon it," Sarah continued, oblivious to the shifting dynamics in the room. "With your help, Sophie, we can create an initiative that aligns with what you've learned from your father, a project that embodies both business acumen and environmental stewardship." Sophie felt the enormity of possibility wash over her, the beginning of what it truly meant to balance her responsibilities as a daughter with her new vision for the future. "We could design programs that integrate education, tourism, and habitat preservation," she jumped in, the excitement bubbling over. She could sense her father relaxing a bit further, the gears in his mind visibly turning as he absorbed the collaboration unfolding before him. Here was a pathway far from the conflict that had defined their previous exchanges. "Perhaps we could run a pilot program," he suggested cautiously, his tone evolving from skepticism to cautious interest. "You could outline a proposal, Sophie. Let us look at how blending conservation efforts with our company will fit." A deep breath in, she was alive. "I can draft something up, showcasing potential partnerships and funding avenues," she proposed, her heart racing as she framed the idea with newfound clarity. "Pair that with local voices, and we've got a winning opportunity," Sarah added, her face lighting up. The conversation surged forward, driven by a shared purpose and collective enthusiasm that propelled them from their respective battlegrounds to a place of collaboration. The more they discussed, the more Sophie saw her father reconsider the implications of integrating environmental mindfulness into their family's legacy. Here was the grace of transformation, not just for her but for her father too. In the moments that followed, Sophie felt as though she had stepped into a new skin, no longer just the daughter of a CEO, but someone wielding influence and intention. The fear that had once pinned her down was being replaced with an exhilarating sense of advocacy. Finally, as the discussion wrapped, her father addressed them both. "Let us embrace this," he said, an openness in his tone that felt liberating. "We can pioneer something that honors our family while considering the world we're leaving behind." Sophie smiled, realizing she was part of an authentic exchange, not just an obedient daughter but a vital contributor intertwined in the legacy. Rising beyond unyielding demands, she transformed fear into collaboration, realizing the brilliance of her voice was alive within her, and it was no longer about her father's empire. It was about her future, their future, and that of the sanctuary. Stepping into the room, she felt the winds of change blowing. Each breath she took redefined what it meant to be Sophie. No more echoes of just the COS daughter, she was an agent of change. As Sarah gathered her things to leave, the weight of the discussion lingered in the air, a newfound understanding, a fragile yet undeniable bond forming between them. With a deeper sense of purpose than ever before, Sophie understood this was the moment to stand firm in her autonomy while still welcoming her father into this collaboration. Even as she walked Sarah to the door, the sunlight streaming through painted hopes of a different kind of legacy, one forged through mutual respect, vision, and shared commitment. Every heartbeat resonated with satisfaction now. This wasn't just about saving a sanctuary, it was about shaping her own destiny. Sophie turned to her father, ready to embrace what was next. Together, they had ignited a path worth embarking on, one where collaboration superseded isolation and opportunity merged with responsibility. The future lay ahead, and she felt ready to embrace it with conviction, courage, and fierce determination. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Real fans of personal overcoming stories know it's crucial to support our journey together through these actions.